Dr. Lisa Morgan stared at the screen, showing impossible numbers. Her hands shook as she checked the calculations for the 100th time. The quantum fold drive was working. After 20 years of failed experiments and broken dreams, humanity had finally cracked faster-than-light travel. "Lisa, are you seeing this?" Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Wright, pointed at another monitor. "The energy readings are stable." "We can actually do this." Lisa nodded slowly. The small test probe had jumped 3 light years in less than a second. It was really happening. Humans could finally leave their solar system and explore the stars. 6 months later, Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, humanity's first interstellar ship. The vessel was not pretty. It looked like a metal box with engines stuck on the back. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. "Prepare for quantum fold jump," Jake announced to his crew of 30 volunteers. Destination: Alpha Centauri system. The stars twisted and bent around them. Then everything went quiet. When the view cleared, they were looking at a new star surrounded by unknown planets. Jake felt his heart race. They had done it. Humans were no longer trapped in one solar system. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Betty Cole from her station, "I'm picking up something strange. There's a ship out there, and it's not from Earth." Jake looked at the main screen. A massive silver vessel floated in space near them. It was 3 times larger than the Discovery and shaped like a crystal. Beautiful lights moved along its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Open communication channels," Jake ordered. "Let's see if anyone's home." The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that was definitely not human. The creature was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. When it moved, light danced through its transparent body. Its voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke. "Greetings, small beings," the alien said. "I am Captain Veltar of the Zelkari Republic. We have been watching your primitive attempts at space travel with some interest. You have finally managed to leave your birth system. How amusing." Jake felt a mix of excitement and annoyance. First contact with aliens, but they seemed to think humans were some kind of joke. "I'm Captain Sullivan of Earth. We're peaceful explorers looking to make contact with other intelligent species." The crystal being made a sound that might have been laughter. "Earth? Is that what you call your little water world? How quaint. You water bags have barely learned to crawl, and yet here you are trying to walk among the stars." Jake's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "We may be new to space travel, but we're fast learners. Perhaps we could arrange a formal meeting?" "Oh, this is too perfect," Veltar said. "The Galactic Confederation will find this most entertaining." "Very well, little water bag. We will escort you to Nexus Prime, where you can meet the real powers of this galaxy. Try not to break anything important." The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days. Jake and his crew spent the time learning what they could about galactic civilization from their crystal escorts. What they learned was not encouraging. The galaxy was controlled by something called the Galactic Confederation. It included 847 different alien species, all ranked in a strict order of importance. At the top were the Ethereal Collective, ancient beings who claimed to understand the deeper meanings of existence. Below them came the Chronari Empire, a military powerhouse that kept peace through superior firepower. Everyone else was ranked based on how long they had been in space, how advanced their technology was, and how useful they were to the upper level. Species. At the bottom were the newest species, who mostly served as workers and resource gatherers. "Where do humans fit in this system?" Jake asked. Veltar's crystal body flashed with amusement. "You don't, little water bag. You will be classified as a Class 7 junior species at best. Perhaps Class 8 if the Council is in a bad mood. You will mine asteroids, grow food, and do whatever simple tasks the real civilizations need done. Commander. Amy Carter, Jake's second-in-command, spoke up. What if we don't agree to that arrangement? The crystal alien's lights dimmed. Then you will learn why the Chronari Empire has maintained galactic peace for over 1,000 years. They do not negotiate with junior species. They simply eliminate problems. When they reached Nexus Prime, Jake felt overwhelmed. The space station was larger than Earth's moon. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its many ports. Some vessels looked like works of art, others like floating cities. The Discovery looked like a metal lunchbox next to them. Amy led the diplomatic team to meet the Confederation Council. The chamber was enormous, with representatives from dozens of species sitting in floating chairs arranged by rank. The highest seats belonged to the ethereals, beings of pure energy that hurt to look at directly. Below them sat the Chronari, massive humanoids in battle armor that could crush a human with one hand. High Arbiter Velinov, leader of the ethereals, spoke without moving. His voice appeared directly in their minds. So these are the new primitives. From the edge of known space. How disappointing. Ambassador Tony Richards, Earth's chief diplomat, stepped forward. Honored Council, we come in peace seeking equal partnership in galactic civilization. The chamber filled with sounds that Amy realized were laughter from dozens of different species. Velinov's mental voice carried clear amusement. Equal partnership? You have been in space for less than one rotation of your planet around its star. Most species here have traveled between worlds for millennia. War Marshal Vekmer of the Chronari leaned forward. His armor was covered in scars from countless battles. These soft creatures speak of equality when they can barely build a proper ship. Their vessel would not survive one hit from our smallest weapon. Tony tried again. We may be new, but we have much to offer. Human creativity and adaptability could benefit everyone. Creativity? Velinov's mental laughter was cold. You will be given simple tasks suitable for your limited abilities. Mining, farming, basic construction. Nothing that requires actual intelligence. Amy felt anger building in her chest. And if we refuse? The chamber went silent. War Marshal Vekmer stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over the human delegation. Junior species do not refuse. Water bag. They obey, or they are replaced by species that will. To demonstrate his point, the chamber's main screen showed a recording of a Chronari battlecruiser destroying a rebel station. The alien ship fired once, and an entire space habitat simply ceased to exist. 1 million beings gone in a flash of light. The Vakthara used to mine in that sector. Vekmer explained casually. They thought they were too good for junior species work. Now the Chitauri do those jobs instead. The Chitauri are much more cooperative. Jake felt sick watching the destruction. These aliens were talking about genocide like it was a minor business decision. The meeting ended with humanity being officially classified as a Class 7 junior species. They were assigned mining rights in 12 undesirable star systems and told to establish colonies that could provide raw materials for more advanced civilizations. As they left the council chamber, Amy grabbed Jake's arm. We can't accept this. They're treating us like slaves. Jake looked back at the massive chamber filled with alien species who saw humans as nothing more than useful animals. Right now, we don't have a choice. But Lisa's team is still working on Earth. Maybe they'll come up with something that changes the game. Neither of them knew that their conversation was being recorded by Confederation monitors, or that their words would be filed away as an example of typical junior species defiance that would eventually need to be corrected. 3 years had passed since humanity's humiliating introduction to galactic civilization. Colonel Steve Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, one of 12 ships that made up Earth's entire space navy. The ship was small, poorly armed, and built from whatever materials Earth could afford after paying the Confederation's crushing taxes. "Sir, we're getting another distress call from New Dallas Colony," reported Lieutenant Danny Clark. "The bugs are hitting them again." Steve closed his eyes and counted to 10. The bugs were the Vorthan swarm, an insect-like species that had been raiding human settlements for the past 6 months. Their ships looked like giant beetles with weapons, and they seemed to enjoy terrorizing the newest members of galactic society. "How many ships this time?" Steve asked. 15 Vorthan raiders against maybe 100 civilian vessels," Danny replied. "The colonists are screaming for help, but we're 3 days away at best speed." Steve punched the wall in frustration. Earth's Navy was a joke. 12 small ships to protect 37 human colonies spread across a dozen star systems. It was like trying to guard an entire country with a squad of security guards. "Send the message to Confederation Command," Steve ordered. "Request immediate assistance under Article 12 of the Protection Protocols." 20 minutes later, the reply came back. Danny read it with disgust. "They say the Vorthan raids are a local difficulty that junior species must handle themselves. Confederation forces are too important to waste on minor pest control." Dr. Karen Walsh, Earth's chief military strategist, had been listening from her workstation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had studied every battle in human history. "Steve, we need to talk privately." They went to Steve's tiny office. Karen locked the door and activated a signal jammer. "I've been analyzing the Vorthan attack patterns. This isn't random raiding. Someone is directing them." Steve leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Karen pulled up a star chart. "Look at this. The Vorthan always know exactly where our weakest colonies are. They hit settlements just when our patrol ships are elsewhere. And their weapons are too advanced for a species that's supposed to be only one level above us in the hierarchy." "You think someone's helping them?" "I think someone's using them to test us," Karen said grimly. "My guess is the Chronari. They want to see how we react under pressure. If we break easily, they'll probably wipe us out and give our systems to someone more useful." Steve felt cold. "What can we do?" "We can't fight the Chronari Empire. They have thousands of ships." Karen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "We can't fight them the way they expect us to fight. But humans have never been good at doing what others expect." She opened a classified file on her computer. "I've been working on something called Project Wildcard. Instead of trying to match alien technology, we focus on what humans do best, which is, we're crazy," Karen said simply. "Every other species in the galaxy fights by rules. They have traditions, honor codes, accepted ways of doing battle. When their ships are damaged, they retreat. When they're outnumbered, they surrender. When they face superior technology, they submit." Steve began to understand. "But humans don't. Always follow rules." "Exactly. We're unpredictable. We fight dirty when we have to. We take risks that other species think are insane. And we never give up, even when giving up is the smart thing to do." Before Steve could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Danny's voice came over the intercom. "Colonel, we're getting an emergency transmission from New Dallas. The colony is under heavy attack. They're requesting immediate evacuation." Steve and Karen rushed back to the bridge. The main screen showed chaos at New Dallas. Vorthan ships swarmed around the human settlement like angry wasps. Buildings were on fire, and civilian ships were trying desperately to escape. "How long until we can get there?" Steve asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, Danny reported. "But sir, by then..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. The Vorthan would finish looting the colony and disappear before Earth's Navy could even arrive. Steve was about to order the ship to New Dallas anyway, when the transmission from the colony suddenly changed. A human voice, filled with terror, screamed across space. "They're not just raiding, they're killing everyone. Men, women, children, they're slaughtering the whole colony." The bridge went silent. This was not a raid. This was genocide. For the next 6 hours, they listened to the colony's desperate transmissions. The Vorthen were systematically destroying every human on New Dallas. When people tried to surrender, the aliens killed them anyway. When children hid in shelters, the bugs hunted them down for sport. The last transmission came from Mayor Linda Hayes of New Dallas. She was trapped in the colony's command center with maybe 50 survivors. "This is Mayor Hayes to any human ship that can hear this. New Dallas is gone. 50,000 people are dead. Tell Earth ... Tell them the bugs aren't just raiders. They're exterminators. Don't let our deaths be meaningless." Then the signal went dead. Steve stared at the empty screen. 50,000 humans dead, and the Galactic Confederation called it a local difficulty. Admiral Peter Davis back on Earth would file a complaint that the Chronari would ignore. The Ethereals would express deep concern and do nothing. The galaxy would forget about New Dallas in a week, sir. Benny said quietly, "What are our orders?" Steve looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw the same cold anger in their eyes that he felt in his heart. These were not the faces of people who would file complaints and wait for permission. "Set course for the Vorthen home system," Steve said. "Sir, that's outside our patrol zone. We don't have authorization." "I don't care about authorization," Steve cut him off. 50,000 humans are dead. We're going to make sure the bugs understand that was a mistake. Karen stepped up beside him. "Steve, if we attack the Vorthen, without Confederation approval, we'll be breaking about 40 different treaties. They could classify us as a rogue species." Steve smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, it was a genuinely happy expression. "Good. I'm tired of following their rules anyway." As the used Defender jumped toward Vorthen space, Steve activated the ship's general communication system. His message went to every human ship, colony, and outpost in their little corner of the galaxy. "This is Colonel Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. New Dallas colony has been destroyed. 50,000 of our people are dead. The Galactic Confederation calls this a local difficulty that we must handle ourselves. Fine, we'll handle it." He paused, thinking about Mayor Hayes and her last message. The aliens think humans are weak because we're new to space. They think we'll follow their rules and accept their judgment. They're about to learn that humans don't always do what others expect. Martinez out. The message spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, Admiral Davis tried to recall the Defender, but Steve had already turned off his communications. On human colonies, people stopped running and started preparing to fight. In shipyards, workers began modifying civilian vessels with whatever weapons they could find. The galaxy was about to discover that there was a difference between being junior members of civilization and being harmless. Humans were definitely junior members. But after New Dallas, they were no longer interested in being harmless. War-Marshal Vekmar of the Chronari received a report about human ship movements 3 days later. He read it with amusement. 12 primitive vessels were apparently planning to attack the Vorthen, who had over 200 ships in their home system. "Stupid water bags," he muttered. "They will be destroyed, and we will not even need to punish them ourselves." Vekmar filed the report under problems that will solve themselves and forgot about it. It was a mistake he would remember for the rest of his very long life. Captain Roy Thompson looked at his 12 ships floating in space near the edge of Vorthen territory. The human fleet looked pathetic compared to the massive alien vessels they had seen at Nexus Prime. The UES Defender was the largest ship, and it was smaller than most alien escape pods. "Roy, we're picking up the Vorthen home fleet," reported Commander Linda Hayes from the UES Ranger. 200 ships, just like intelligence said. They're not even trying to hide. Roy nodded grimly. The bugs were so confident that they had not bothered to set up proper defenses. Why would they? 12 tiny human ships against their entire fleet was not a battle. It was target practice. "Remember the plan," Roy announced to all ships. "We don't try to match their firepower. We do what Dr. Walsh taught us. We be human." 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. After New Dallas, every human in space had volunteered to help modify their ships. They could not make their vessels bigger or more powerful, but they could make them unpredictable. The human ships had been rebuilt from the inside out. Normal safety systems were removed or modified. Engines were rigged to overload on command. Hull sections could be ejected as improvised weapons. Every ship carried 10 times more ammunition than recommended, stored in ways that violated every space safety regulation ever written. "All ships, begin attack run," Roy ordered. "Remember, we're not trying to win a clean fight. We're trying to scare the hell out of them." The 12 human ships accelerated toward Vorthen Prime. The alien fleet moved to intercept them in a perfect formation that would have impressed military academies across the galaxy. It was exactly what the humans had hoped for. "Linda, execute Maneuver 7, Roy called out. The UE's Ranger suddenly broke formation and dove directly at the largest Vorthen battleship. Instead of firing at long range like civilized species, Linda flew her ship so close to the enemy that their hulls were almost touching. Then she opened fire with everything she had. The Vorthen ship tried to return fire, but it could not hit a target that was practically attached to its hull. Meanwhile, Linda's guns were tearing through armor, point-blank range. Sparks and debris flew between the two vessels as they spiraled through space in a deadly dance. "Roy, this is insane," Linda laughed over the radio. "I can see the bugs through their windows." Other human ships followed her example. Instead of maintaining proper battle formations, they scattered in all directions. Captain Alex Turner dove his ship under the Vorthen fleet and fired upward. Commander Sam Rodriguez flew between 2 alien vessels and launched missiles in both directions simultaneously. The Vorthen had never seen anything like it. Their perfect formation became a liability as human ships darted between their ranks like angry hornets. Every time they tried to target a human vessel, it would do something completely unpredictable. Chief Engineer Danny Clark made the first breakthrough. His ship, the UE's Hammer, took a direct hit that would have forced any sensible captain to retreat. Instead, Danny sealed himself in the engine room and began overloading the fusion reactor. "All ships, this is Danny. My reactor is going critical. In 30 seconds. Any bugs who want to survive should back away now." The Vorthen ship that had been pursuing him tried to escape, but it was too late. The U's Hammer exploded with the force of a small star, taking 3 enemy vessels with it and damaging a dozen others. "Holy hell," whispered Captain Grace Kelly. From the U's storm, Danny just turned his ship into a bomb. "Copy that technique," Roy ordered. "Any ship that takes critical damage, overload your reactor and take some bugs with you." The psychological effect on the Vorthen was devastating. They were used to enemies who followed rules. When a ship was damaged, it retreated for repairs. When a crew was outnumbered, they surrendered. No one used their own vessel as a weapon, but humans apparently had no such limitations. The battle reached its climax when Captain Alex Turner found himself surrounded by 5 Vorthen ships. His weapons were destroyed, his engines were failing, and his hull was breached in a dozen places. Any reasonable captain would have surrendered. Instead, Alex activated the ship's intercom and broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Turner of Earth to any alien listening. You want to know what makes humans different? We don't know when to quit. He aimed his crippled ship directly at the Vorthen command vessel and pushed his damaged engines to maximum power. The bugs tried desperately to destroy his ship before it reached them, but Alex had already shut down everything except life support and engines. The UES Eagle struck the Vorthen flagship at nearly 1/10 the speed of light. The collision tore both ships apart in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Suddenly, the remaining Vorthen ships stopped fighting. Their fleet commander sent a message to the humans on all frequencies. We surrender. Please stop. We yield to the Earth warriors. Roy could hardly believe it. The bugs were giving up. They had 200 ships left against his remaining 7 vessels, but they were surrendering. This is Captain Thompson of the Earth Defense Force, Roy replied. You will withdraw all Vorthen forces from human space immediately. Any bug ship found near our colonies will be destroyed without warning. Yes, we agree. Please do not send more death ships. As the Vorthen fleet retreated in panic, Roy realized what had happened. The aliens were not just defeated. They were terrified. They had never faced an enemy willing to use their own ships as weapons, to fight until death rather than surrender. News of the victory spread through the galaxy at light speed. The response from other species was immediate and confused. Most aliens could not understand what had happened. How had 12 primitive ships defeated 200 advanced vessels? High Arbiter Velinoth of the Ethereals called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the human incident at Vorthen Prime. This is disturbing, Velinoth announced to the assembly. The junior species has displayed tactics that violate fundamental principles of civilized warfare. War Marshal Lekmer of the Chronari was less diplomatic. They fight like savages, using ships as bombs, ramming enemy vessels, ignoring surrender protocols. This behavior cannot be tolerated. Ambassador Tony Richards, representing Earth at the emergency session, stood to address the council. Honored representatives, we did exactly what you told us to do. You said junior species must handle their own local difficulties. We handled ours by breaking every rule of proper military conduct. Dekmer roared. Civilized beings do not turn their own vessels into weapons. Tony smiled coldly. Civilized beings do not massacre 50,000 colonists either. But the Vorthen did that, and you called it a local difficulty, so we solved it locally. The chamber erupted in angry voices as dozens of species argued about human behavior. Some demanded punishment, others wanted to study human tactics, and a few quietly began reconsidering their own military doctrines. Velinoth finally restored order. The humans will be monitored closely. Their behavior at Vorthen Prime was concerning. If they continue to violate accepted standards of warfare, the Confederation will take appropriate action. Tony's response was broadcast live to every human colony. The Confederation is welcome to try. But I suggest you remember what happened to the last species that attacked human civilians. As Tony left the council chamber, he was approached by a representative from the Chitauri, the insect species that served as slave laborers for the upper castes. The small, ant-like creature spoke in whispers. Human friend, many junior species watched the battle at Vorthen Prime. We have never seen anyone make the mighty ones afraid before. Some of us are inspired by your example. Tony looked down at the Chitauri with interest. Inspired how? Perhaps junior species do not have to accept everything the mighty ones demand, the alien said quietly. Perhaps there are other ways to handle local difficulties. As Tony returned to Earth, he realized the victory at Vorthen Prime had done more than defeat one enemy fleet. It had shown the entire galaxy that the established order could be challenged. Hundreds of junior species were now asking themselves, if humans could defy the mighty ones and win, why couldn't they? War Marshal Vickmer received intelligence reports about growing unrest among junior species throughout Confederation space. Slaves were becoming rebellious, tribute payments were being delayed, and several species had simply stopped responding to Chronari commands. This is the humans' fault, he told his staff. Their savagery is spreading like a disease. We must cure this infection before it destroys galactic order. Vickmer began planning Operation Correction, a military campaign designed to remind all junior species of their proper place in the galaxy. The humans would be made an example of, their worlds burned and their people scattered as a warning to others. He never considered that the humans might have planned for exactly this response, or that their victory at Vorthen Prime had been just the opening move in a much larger game. General Nick Foster stood in the command center on Luna, Earth's moon, watching 200 Chronari warships approach the solar system. Each alien vessel was the size of a city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The sight should have filled him with terror. Instead, he felt oddly calm. "Sir, the Chronari are broadcasting their surrender demand," reported Colonel Betty Cole. "They want unconditional submission within 1 hour, or they'll start destroying human colonies." Nick nodded. "Send them our reply." The message was simple. Come and take them. War Marshal Vickmer received the human response aboard his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He had expected begging, pleading, maybe an offer to negotiate. Instead, the water bags were defying him. Him, the conqueror of 1,000 worlds. "Destroy their outer defense platforms," he ordered. "Show them the price of defiance." The Chronari fleet opened fire on the asteroid belt, where human mining stations had been converted into weapons platforms. The ancient aliens expected quick victory. Instead, they got their first surprise. The asteroid stations did not try to fight back. They exploded. Every single human outpost in the asteroid belt detonated simultaneously, turning space rock and metal into a massive cloud of high-speed debris. The expanding wall of destruction caught the lead Chronari ships, shredding their shields and punching holes in armor that had never been damaged in 1,000 years of conquest. What just happened? Vickmer demanded. His tactical officer stared at the sensor readings in confusion. "Sir, the humans destroyed their own bases. All of them at the same time. Why would they do that?" The answer came when the debris cloud reached the main Chronari formation. What had looked like random destruction revealed itself as a carefully planned attack. Hidden within the expanding field of wreckage were thousands of human missiles, using the debris as cover to get close to enemy ships. The Chronari point defense systems could not track targets hidden in the chaos of destroyed asteroids. Missile after missile slipped through their defenses and struck home. In minutes, the mighty Eternal Conquest was listing badly, its armor cracked and its weapons failing. "Impossible," Vickmer whispered. "Junior species do not sacrifice their own infrastructure as weapons." Captain Grace Kelly commanded the defense of Luna from her underground bunker. The moon's surface was covered with weapon emplacements, shield generators, and missile silos. It looked like the most heavily fortified position in human space. It was also a trap. When the Chronari fleet moved to attack Luna, Grace activated Protocol 7. Every weapon, every generator, every piece of military equipment on the moon's surface was rigged to explode. The human defenders had been hiding in deep bunkers, waiting for this moment. "All personnel, this is Grace Kelly. Luna Base is going critical in 10 seconds. It has been an honor serving with you all." The moon did not actually explode, but the massive detonation of military equipment on its surface created something almost as devastating. A directed energy pulse, focused and amplified by Luna's gravitational field, struck the Chronari fleet like the fist of an angry god. 50 alien warships simply stopped working. Their computers crashed, their weapons went offline, and their engines died. They drifted helplessly as human ships swung around them like sharks around wounded whales. Admiral Peter Davis led the counterattack from Earth's hidden reserve fleet. These were not the crude vessels the galaxy had seen at Vorthen Prime. These were Reaper-class ships, built in secret using technology salvaged from every battle humanity had fought. The Reapers looked wrong to alien eyes. They were covered in patches, repair plates, and jury-rigged systems. They appeared to be held together with hope and determination rather than proper engineering. But they worked in ways that violated every principle of galactic ship design. When a Reaper took damage, it kept fighting. When critical systems failed, backup systems activated. When backup systems failed, the crew improvised new solutions using whatever was available. The ships were designed to be nearly destroyed and still remain dangerous. Commander Carl Johnson led the first Reaper squadron into battle. His flagship, the U.S. Vengeance, had been built from the wreckage of 3 different vessels. It should not have been able to fly, much less fight. But it flew anyway, because humans had decided it would. The psychological impact on the Chronari was immediate and devastating. They were fighting an enemy that refused to follow basic rules of physics and logic. Ships that should have been destroyed kept shooting. Crews that should have surrendered kept fighting. It was like battling ghosts that happened to carry very large guns. The breaking point came when Captain Helen Ross found herself commanding the U.S. Defiance after it had been cut in half by Chronari fire. The front section of her ship was gone, along with most of her crew. By all logic, she should have abandoned the wreck. Instead, she sealed herself in the remaining engine section and continued the fight. "This is Captain Ross to all Chronari forces," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You want to know what humans are made of? We're the species that keeps fighting even when we're already dead." She aimed her half-ship at the nearest Chronari cruiser and fired her remaining weapons. The alien vessel tried to flee, but Helen's improvised missile managed to cripple its engines. As her own ship finally died around her, she transmitted one last message. "Tell the galaxy, humans don't surrender." The word spread through the Chronari fleet like a virus. Ship after ship reported the same impossible sight: human vessels continuing to fight long after they should have been destroyed. Crews refusing to abandon ships that were little more than floating scrap metal. War Marshal Vecmer watched his mighty armada being torn apart by an enemy that should not have been able to hurt them. 50 ships destroyed, another 100 damaged, and the waterbags were still fighting with the wreckage of their own fleet. "Sir, we should withdraw and regroup," his tactical officer suggested. "The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered. We do not retreat from junior species." Vecmer roared. But even as he said it, he was watching human fighters ram his battleships. He was seeing crews that kept fighting even when their ships were breaking apart around them. For the first time in his 1,000-year military career, Vecmer felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The war ended when Admiral Davis led the reformed human fleet in a direct assault on the remaining Chronari ships. The sight of human vessels, many held together with little more than emergency welds in stubborn determination, systematically destroying the galaxy's most feared military force, sent shockwaves across known space. When the last Chronari ship limped away from Earth's solar system, damaged and defeated, every species in the galaxy received the same message. The established order had been shattered by a junior species that refused to accept its place. High Arbiter Velinoth called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, but half the species did not show up. The junior races were too busy declaring independence, and the senior species were too busy trying to figure out how their entire worldview had just been proven wrong. "This is catastrophic," Velinov announced to the reduced assembly. "The humans have destabilized the entire galactic order." "Good," replied Ambassador Kevin Wright, who had replaced Tony Richards as Earth's representative. "Your order was built on the assumption that some species were naturally superior to others. We just proved that assumption was wrong." As the human fleet returned to Earth, scarred but victorious, Admiral Davis received reports from across the galaxy. The Chitauri had overthrown their Zelkari masters. The mining species in the Outer Rim had declared independence. Junior races everywhere were refusing tribute payments and demanding equal treatment. The rigid caste system that had maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years was collapsing, and it was all because one species had refused to accept that. They were inferior to anyone else. Back on Earth, Dr. Karen Walsh studied the battle reports with satisfaction. Her theories about human military doctrine had been proven correct. It was not superior technology or ancient wisdom that won wars. It was the willingness to pay any price for victory, to sacrifice everything for freedom, and to keep fighting even when defeat seemed certain. The galaxy was about to learn the humans were not just another junior species. They were the species. That changed everything simply by refusing to accept that change was impossible. War Marshal Vecmer sat in his damaged flagship, staring at reports of rebellion across Chronari space. Junior species everywhere were copying human tactics using improvised weapons and desperate courage to challenge their masters. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years was crumbling, and it was all because of one small blue planet on the edge of nowhere. He opened a communication channel to Earth, knowing his career was over, but needing to understand what had happened. "Human. Admiral Davis," he said when the connection was established. "I have fought for 1,000 years. I have conquered species with technology far advanced beyond yours. How did you defeat us?" Davis looked tired but determined. "You fought like you. Expected to win easily. We fought like we had nothing left to lose. That made all the difference." Vecmer considered this for a long moment. "What happens now?" "Now?" Davis smiled grimly. "Now you learn to treat other species as equals instead of slaves. The age of galactic empires is over." President Julia Martinez stood before the reformed Galactic Council in the new meeting hall on Earth's orbital station, New Geneva. 2 years had passed since the war that broke the Chronari Empire, and the galaxy looked very different now. Old hierarchy was gone. Species that had been slaves for thousands of years now sat as equals beside their former masters. The Chitauri delegate, once a terrified worker, now spoke with confidence about trade agreements. The Vakthari, who had been extinct according to Chronari records, had somehow survived and returned to reclaim their homeworld. "Honored representatives," Julia began, "today we celebrate the 2nd anniversary of galactic liberation. But we also face new challenges that require all species to work together." High Arbiter Velinov, one of the few ethereals who had accepted the new order, floated nearby in his energy form. His mental voice was much humbler than it had been years ago. "President Martinez speaks truth. The old ways brought stability through oppression. We must find stability through cooperation." Ambassador Kevin Wright handed Julia a datapad with the latest reports. The news was mostly good. Trade between species had increased by 300%. Scientific discoveries were being shared freely instead of hoarded by the upper castes. Art, music, and literature from 1,000 different worlds were enriching galactic culture, but there were problems too. Some species were struggling to adapt to freedom after millennia of slavery. Others were seeking revenge against their former oppressors. And there were reports of something new at the edge of known space. "We have received concerning signals from the Galactic Rim," Julia announced. "Long-range sensors have detected artificial transmissions from beyond our territory. It appears we are not alone in the universe." A murmur ran through the assembly. The galaxy had always assumed it contained all intelligent life in the universe. The idea that there might be other civilizations beyond their borders was both exciting and terrifying. Admiral Betty Foster, now Supreme Commander of the Alliance Defense Force, stepped forward to address the Council. "Whatever we find out there, we will face it together. The days of junior and senior species are over. We are all equals in the Alliance." The appliance was immediate and heartfelt. Species that had never been allowed to speak in the old Council now cheered for a human admiral who treated them as partners instead of servants. After the formal session, Julia met privately with representatives from the former Confederation powers. War Marshal Vekmer, now simply Marshal Vekmer of the reformed Kronari Republic, sat across from her looking older and wiser than before. "President Martinez, my people are still struggling to understand what happened," he admitted. "For 1,000 years, we believed strength meant controlling others. You showed us that real strength means standing together." Julia nodded. "It was not easy for us either, Marshal. But humans learned long ago that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." Dr. Karan Walsh, now Director of Alliance Strategic Planning, joined the meeting with troubling news. "Julia, we've analyzed those signals from the Galactic Rim. They're not random. Someone out there has been watching us, and they're moving in our direction." "How long do we have?" Julia asked. 6 months, maybe 8. Whatever's coming, it's big. The energy signatures suggest a fleet larger than anything we've ever seen." Marshal Vekmer leaned forward. "If there is a threat to the galaxy, the Kronari will stand with the Alliance. We have learned the value of cooperation from human example." 3 months later, Captain Sam Rodriguez commanded the AES Humanity's Will, the first truly integrated starship in galactic history. His crew included humans, Kronari, Chitauri, reformed Vorthan, and dozen other species working together as equals. They were approaching the edge of known space when sensors detected the approaching fleet. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Thousands of ships were moving toward Alliance space. The vessels were massive, dark, and covered in weapons. They did not respond to communication attempts, and their technology was completely unknown. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Lisa Morgan at the science station, "I'm detecting artificial intelligence signatures from the lead ships. I don't think there are any biological crews aboard." Sam felt cold. "Robot ships? More than that," Lisa replied grimly. "These are war machines. Pure artificial intelligence designed for one purpose: conquest and extermination." Sam immediately sent a message back to Alliance Command. Within hours, every species in the galaxy received the same alert. An unknown force of artificial intelligences was approaching, and they showed no interest in negotiation or peace. The response was immediate. Kronari battle fleets moved to join human task forces. Ethereal energy beings provided strategic planning. Former slave species contributed every ship they could spare. The galaxy that had been divided by hatred and prejudice for millennia united. In the face of extinction, Admiral Betty Foster coordinated the defense from Alliance Command. Looking at the tactical display, she realized they were facing an enemy larger than all previous galactic conflicts combined. But she also saw something that would have been impossible under the old system: complete cooperation between species that had once been bitter enemies. "All fleet commanders," she announced, "remember what we learned fighting the Kronari. Superior technology means nothing if you're not willing to sacrifice everything for victory. These machines may be advanced, but they're facing something they've probably never encountered before: species that refused to surrender. The first battle took place at the edge of the spiral arm. Captain Rodriguez led a mixed squadron of Alliance ships against the machine scouts. The artificial intelligences fought with perfect coordination and overwhelming firepower, but they made one critical mistake. They assumed their enemies would fight logically. Instead, they faced human-trained crews who used every dirty trick. In the book, ships that rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed, crews that turned damaged vessels into bombs, captains who kept fighting even when their ships were falling apart around them. But the machines learned quickly. They adapted their tactics, compensated for human unpredictability, and began pushing deeper into Alliance space. The war lasted 3 years. Billions died as world after world fell to the artificial intelligence fleet. But something remarkable happened during those dark years. The galaxy species stopped thinking of themselves as separate civilizations and started thinking of themselves as one people. Humans taught aliens how to fight with courage and creativity. Aliens taught humans about technologies and strategies beyond their imagination. The ethereals provided wisdom, the Chronari provided strength, and the former slave species provided determination born from knowing what it meant to be free. The final battle took place at Earth itself. The machine intelligence had decided that humanity was the source of the rebellion that had united the galaxy against them. If they could destroy Earth, they could break the Alliance's will to fight. They were wrong. When the artificial intelligence fleet arrived at humanity's home system, they found it defended by every species in the galaxy. Chronari dreadnoughts flew alongside human destroyers. Ethereal energy beings merged with Chitauri fighters. Former enemies died together, defending the world that had shown them all what freedom meant. President Julia Martinez watched the battle from her command bunker, knowing that this would decide the fate of all organic life in the galaxy. The machine fleet was larger, more advanced, and perfectly coordinated, but they were fighting an enemy that had learned to be greater than the sum of its parts. The machines lost because they could not understand what they were fighting. They saw individual species using primitive tactics and assumed victory was certain. They did not realize they were facing a unified galactic civilization that had learned to value cooperation over domination, courage over technology, and freedom over security. When the last machine ship was destroyed, Admiral Foster sent a message to every world in Alliance space. The galaxy is free. We stand together as equals, united by the principle that no species should ever again bow to another. 10 years later, Ambassador Kevin Wright stood before the Alliance Council to deliver his final report before retirement. The galaxy had not only survived the machine war, but had emerged stronger than ever. New colonies were being established beyond the galactic rim. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as species shared knowledge freely. Art and culture were flourishing as different civilizations learned from each other. When humanity first reached the stars, Kevin said, we were told we were too primitive to matter, too weak to have opinions, too young to deserve respect. We proved them wrong not by becoming like them, but by showing them a better way. He paused, looking around. The chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Today, children from 1,000 different species learn the same lesson in their schools. When people stand together as equals, willing to sacrifice for each other's freedom, the impossible becomes inevitable. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, not our technology or our weapons, but our refusal to accept that anyone is naturally superior to anyone else. As the session ended, Ambassador Wright received a message from long-range sensors. New signals had been detected from beyond the galactic edge. Not machines this time, but organic life. Other civilizations in Dist.